So Utah is digging into the records of kindergartners to see if they could be transgender. Yeah, that's right. A Utah school investigated a high school athlete, digging into her records back to kindergarten after she defeated two other girls and their parents then questioned whether she was transgender. So again, the sleuthing is because parents are mad that their daughter was beaten in a sport by another kid, right? Who they're now claiming must be transgender because my daughter's not gonna lose. And so if this is a girls' team, I call transgender. Let's send out the sleuths. Insanity, y'all. So this came to light, this had happened because there was a hearing in front of Utah lawmakers about the transgender ban on sports, basically, that they passed in July. So this is the High School Activities Association spokesperson, David Spatafore. He said the investigation came after the parents of the second and third place finishers filed a complaint with the UHSAA, again, Utah High School Activities Association, which oversees high school sports in the state. The girls won first place in a competition last year by a wide margin, Spatafore said during a legislative hearing Wednesday on transgender athletes. He used the example to show lawmakers that the association has responded to and investigated complaints regarding transgender athletes and that it intends to follow the new law now banning them from playing on girls' sports teams in Utah schools. Now, the association apparently gets a lot of complaints from angry, overbearing helicopter parents who also are bigots. They get complaints, this is according to Spatafore, when, quote, an athlete doesn't look feminine enough, adding that it looks into each one. In this case, the school did an initial review of the winning student's high school record and saw she was registered as a female student. Spatafore then said the UHSAA was instructed to dig further to double check. School officials called her middle school and elementary school to look at her file, he noted. The school went back to kindergarten and said she's always been a female. If someone's been a female since kindergarten, he added, it's likely they didn't transition genders. Thank you, head of athletics for high schools in Utah, for telling me who is and who is not transgender. I can't wrap my mind around the petty bigotry of a parent who's like, oh, you looked into the high school records? No. I want you to look into elementary school records and kindergarten records. You got to keep going and just calling and freaking out about this. Now, there's a reason I haven't said what the sport is or the name of this student or like what she won in, because that's all been protected for her identity, apparently. In fact, this is the last thing before I kick it to you, Erin. Spatafore said the student and her family weren't told about the investigation because it might be offensive or embarrassing that someone thought the girl was transgender. He said she wasn't told to protect her. The parents would have been involved if needed, Spatafore said, but he felt the school was able to clear up concerns by looking at her records instead. So that's all fine. None the wiser.
Oh my God, they are so creepy, Francesca. Like, I can think of nothing, there is no word to better describe this sort of investigation, the type of entitlement the parents felt to inquire about a kid's genitals. Because if this girl won a high school competition, she's a child, she's legally a child. So they are so obsessed with a child's genitals that they required multiple school staffs to investigate what those genitalia were. Like, good Lord, incredibly creepy. Also, it speaks to a complete provincialism by the parents, because here's the thing, super great athletes seem superhuman to compete against. There was a girl, I'm from a really small town in northern Wisconsin, and there was a girl in a rival high school. Who was like, she ended up being on the US hockey team, the US women's hockey team.
Oh wow, nice.
3 times. And nicest person in the world. She went out for cross country, waxed everybody her freshman year. She was just so much better than everybody else. In basketball, whenever I had to guard her, it was like, well, great, I'm gonna get my butt kicked. Like, she was so much better at all the sports than everybody. Great athletes really leave people in the dust, and like gender and their sexual identity has nothing to do with it. And I hate to break it to these parents and to anybody who would look at a great female athlete as somehow suspicious. I hate to break it to you, but that's what great athletes are. They're that much better than regular people. And I'm sorry that your daughters had to learn that they were normal in such a disturbing way, but sometimes you're just normal and some people are exceptional compared to you. And that's just, them's the breaks,
It's so true, and it points to the hypocrisy. Let's set aside how heinous it is to prevent transgender students and youth in Utah, of which there seem to be 4.
Yeah.
4 students who are trans and would like to play on the teams of their gender identity. But the fact is that this is all under the guise of we got to protect women's sports, when you've got in practice parents who are like, nah, girls aren't that good. That can't be a girl. That's gotta be a guy. You love women's sports.
None of these people would go to a WNBA game. They do not care about women's sports. Women's sports can be extremely exciting to watch. I love the NCAA tournament, the women's tournament. It's so fun. High level women's soccer, so fun. I have extreme doubts that these people are lining up to buy Angel City FC season tickets. They don't care about women's sports. They care about enforcing bigotry on people who just want to play.
Yes, and just a little more context about this. So the governor of Utah actually vetoed the trans ban on student athletes when it came up, and it was overridden by the state legislature. And he said in response to this incident and this investigation, he said, "My goodness, we are living in a world where we become sore losers and we're looking for any reason why our kid lost. I have a real problem with that story. I just wish we could be a little more thoughtful in life and a little less critical of other people." And I kind of echoes, this is Governor Cox. It echoes his sentiment. And look, I'm sure he's probably Mormon. He probably doesn't believe in reproductive choice. He probably, all the things, we probably disagree on everything. But on this issue, it seems like he's leading with, I think, what we all need to lead with, which is our hearts and our empathy. So when that veto came down, he said something really honest and sort of echoes his sentiment that he just said recently. He says, "I must admit, I'm not an expert on transgenderism. I struggle to understand so much of it, and the science is conflicting. When in doubt, however, I always try to err on the side of kindness, mercy, and compassion," he wrote. "I don't understand what they're going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live." If you take nothing away from any debate on whether trans people should be able to play on the teams of their gender identity, or whether they should have, I don't know, basic civil rights, or right now gender affirming care that's being vilified, just focus on that. You don't understand what they're going through. You don't know what it's like. All you want to do is you want them to live. Period. And it's all solved, and it all goes away, and it all becomes so clear. It's just insane to me that we lack that amount of basic compassion. One last thing on this. I did mention there was only a few transgender athletes who are in the state of Utah, but they are currently challenging the transgender ban. So currently 3 transgender girls who want to play as girls are challenging this ban in court. If a judge grants the injunction, then a commission will go into effect and will make decisions on which transgender girls can compete. This is where it gets a little gross. The members are set to evaluate a transgender player's wingspan, weight, and height, and whether a girl is taking hormone blockers to determine if she might have an unfair advantage according to the legislature's plan. So good on them for actually fighting this. Gets a little bit weird and gross when it comes to who can determine and how they determine whether or not they can play as their gender identity.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.